Okay. I'm here with Jolene. How are you? And tell me about your art.
Hi, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. This is an honor. Um, so I call myself a muralist because that's what I do for the majority of my job. But I would say that I'm an artist in general. I started out doing acrylic paintings, oil paintings, some charcoal and chalk drawings, things like that, and sort of pivoted into doing murals as my profession.
Okay, so chalk murals, chalk
Yeah,
drawings, or chalk murals.
both.
Okay, tell me about that. That's something I have not dabbled in. How do you, first off, my main question is how do you deal with that it's just going to get washed away?
Yeah, that's a big question that we get asked a lot. So the majority of the chalk work that I have done has been at like chalk festivals, street painting festivals, and people can come and they can watch the process. It's usually about 2 days or so, and people can see everything from start to finish, which is a really cool kind of peek into artist processes. But yeah, people are always like, "This is temporary. It's not permanent. Like that's such a shame." And I understand where they're coming from, but it's a practice in letting go, I think. Nothing is permanent, especially if you are painting commissions, for example. Like you're not going to keep those paintings; they're going to go somewhere
Mhm.
else. You're going to probably take pictures of them for your portfolio or just for your memories, and that's what we do. We take a lot of photos, we document the process. But yeah, and then it's gone after a couple days, so you really have to be okay with letting go of it.
Hmm. How does one get into chalk festivals?
So I consider myself very lucky because I went to high school in San Rafael, California, and unfortunately it's not happening anymore, but they used to have one of the biggest chalk festivals in the country in San Rafael. So as a student in high school, I was very into art. That was like my main kind of focus. And our art teacher, Tia Warner, she was very involved in getting the students out and into artistic stuff, creative stuff. And the street painting event usually happened right around the end of the school year or maybe just after the school year had ended. So I actually did the local street painting festival 4 years in a row for all years of high school. And that's kind of how I got into doing large scale pieces. I really enjoyed working big.
I guess that's true with the I don't really think about that. I think I just know it lives on in somebody else's home. But my friend and another artist, Austin, we worked on a mural in Cozumel and he just went and visited there and he sent me a picture and they have like a display case in front of our main mural and he's like, "You can't even see
Really?
it." I'm like, "Oh, why would they do that?" But it's also like
Yeah.
it's kind of gone in that way. So yeah, I guess I
hmm
do just let go of every painting after I finish at our mural. So it's same thing.
Yeah.
Kind
Yeah. And most murals are like as the artist, you have the right for it to stay there unless you have a specific contract where the client says that they have, reserved the right to paint over it if they want to, which happens. And, it's one of those things that I'm just like, well, it is what it is. Just take a lot of pictures.
Yeah. So how do you get customers? How did you get 'em when you first started out? How are you getting customers now?
Um, so let's see. I think when I first started out, it was majorly word of mouth. And I also set up a website with Squarespace and I utilized the SEO, search engine optimization tool, which I think was really helpful because people would search, muralist in the Bay Area where I used to live, and my name would be one of the first things that came up. So that was really helpful. Definitely would recommend getting SEO if you don't already. I mean, I'm sure you have it, but anyone listening doesn't already have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
SEO.
and sorry, your second half of your question. How am I doing it now? Honestly, a lot of the same. I mean, people, see my name on a mural that they enjoy and they'll reach out that way, usually through Instagram, sometimes through my website. Um, Yeah, I don't market myself a ton, which I feel really lucky in that way that people are just really interested in my work from, seeing me around and seeing my work around.
Okay. Yeah. So SEO, how did you go about that?
Well, as I mentioned, my website is through Squarespace, and they have like a built-in SEO tool,
Ooh,
which is great. So I have had Squarespace since I started. I don't really know how other website hosting uh, places, I guess,
platforms, yeah.
do that. Platforms, thank you.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, if you have a platform with the built-in SEO, I think that's really helpful and easy.
So they just have you type in keywords and it
hmm
lives on your website?
Yeah, I don't totally understand how it works, but yeah, the on the platform you're supposed to enter keywords, and it seems like when you Google, you know, things with those keywords in it, I tend to be, up at least on the first page of Google, which no one ever looks past the first page, so that's helpful.
True, okay, yeah, that sounds like a great tool. Like, why does every website house hosting platform not have that? I don't know if Shopify
hmm
has that. That's what I'm on, but I should look into that. Okay, noted.
Yeah.
Okay, so, we love to talk about business and money and all the things. So,
hmm
how do you price your current projects?
So currently, I to be very honest, I have like a range of prices, right? So I go from between $20 per square foot to $40 a square foot, and I usually just kind of play it by ear in terms of how much I'm going to charge for a project. If it's something that I'm really excited about, that it's more of a passion project, leaning in that direction, I might charge a little bit less because it's something that like I'm stoked on and I really want to do. If it's something that is not really in my wheelhouse or something that I'm less excited about, I might charge more, and that makes it worth my time.
I feel you. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like the exciting factor, like the likability factor sometimes of like if your customer is just so freaking nice and they're letting you have a lot of design control, you're like, "Okay, I
Yeah,
like you."
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and
The
I just recently gave myself a minimum charge. So right now I'm charging $5,000 minimum for a
Ooh,
project. And that's mainly because I'm going for the bigger, more like projects that I can really spend, a few months on, or maybe not a few months for $5,000, but a little bit more of something that has more substance. Not
yeah.
that small projects don't have substance, but you know what I mean. Something that I can really sink my teeth into.
Yeah, and stretch your creative abilities, really think on it, and yeah.
hmm
Okay, I had a question, dang it. Oh. Oh, yes, okay. Yay for editing. So who are your customers mostly that you're talking to get those bigger projects?
Great question. So generally, the bigger projects that I'm getting, I'm doing a lot of applications to projects put on by cities, government entities, larger businesses. I'm working on a project right now for an apartment complex out in Napa, California, and they had a pretty decent budget. It's also two murals, and they're pretty large, and they're actually starting a story up from the street, so it's like it's up there. um, but yeah, I really keep my eye out for any calls that have the budget that I'm willing to work in, and of course you always have to take into account, like the travel expenses, things like that. Like I was just looking at a project out in Florida that I thought looked really good, and the budget was decent, but not quite enough for somebody traveling across the country and having to stay out there for several weeks. So that was kind of a sticking point that I thought maybe not this time for this one.
Okay, so bigger businesses, cities, where are you finding the things to apply for within the city?
So I have I've signed up for lots of different um, call websites. So I have a profile on Call for Entry or Cafe. I'm also on publicartist.org. Um, I live in Sacramento, so I, signed up for the the Office of Arts and Culture um, email list. So I get like they always put their local calls in there, grants, things like that. So I've got my fingers in a lot of different places, and I'm just trying to keep an eye out for anything that might look interesting to me, or that I might be a good fit for. So I'm doing a lot of applying.
Okay, out of how many oh, you're good.
Sorry.
Yeah. Out of how many that you apply for do you get? Because I am just starting to apply for things, and there's some I'm like, "Oh,
Mhm.
this is a great idea. I'm gonna send it to 'em." They're like, "Nope, you don't make it past the first round." I'm like, "Okay, thanks."
Yeah, I will not lie, it can be rough. I When I first started applying for things, I would like just apply for anything that I thought was even remotely close to what I could do, and just rejection after rejection after rejection. So it's not for the faint of heart. But you have to remember that there are so many artists, so many good artists in probably your state, let alone, the country, let alone the world. There's just a ton of competition. And just don't stop doing it, because as what was it? Michael Scott said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, by Wayne Gretzky.
Okay, what are some pointers when applying for these things then? Like something that like that you do that you try to do every time or that you've learned through feedback of applying for these and not getting them or getting them and you knowing why or
hmm Um, I think the first year that I started applying, and getting a lot of the rejections, I don't think I got anything in my first year, that I started to apply to a lot of things. And
why do you think that is?
well, I will say, so I was talking to my friend Jane of Inkdwell, who's an artist out here in California, and um, I was just talking about how bummed I was that I wasn't getting anything, and she asked, are you focusing on things that are like really important to you, that you really feel called to? And I was kind of like, not really. I was just sort of blanket applying to everything. And she said, well, it might behoove you to focus on things that are really important, that really, you feel drawn to, and that feel like something that's really your fit. Um, and so I have been doing that. I whittled my scope down a bit more. I'm still looking at projects, across the country, but I'm being a lot more intentional and specific about the ones that really feel like something that is specific to me. Um, and I have gotten a couple projects. One of them was from San Jose, which is a city not far from me. So I think that helps that I'm like sort of semi local. And it also had to do with uh, portraits. The people that decided that they wanted to hire me, I said, what made me stand out, and they said, we really loved your portraits. We loved the expressiveness that you put into the faces that you paint, and also the color. So that was a sticking point. So I think it's really good to ask, when you do get a job, or even when someone reaches out to you and says, we saw your name somewhere, we would like to hire you. I like to get a little bit more information, like, where did you see my name? What mural was it? Or like, did someone recommend me? It's always good to know like where the jobs are coming from.
Definitely, just remembering to ask is a good
Yeah.
one. Okay, so I like to ask guests what's their special sauces? Like what is the thing that you've done or you've made a practice of or a skill that you have that is the reason that you think that sets you apart from others or has been one of the main ingredients to why you're successful for a long period of time and have made this your business?
Oh man, I am not 100% sure.
It's okay, we can think
Um,
about it and move on or something.
yeah, well, I think I've been told by a lot of different people that I'm very professional, which I think maybe they're surprised at because they don't think of like an artist as being professional, which is like kind of silly, but I get it. Um, and I try to think of how I would like to be informed if I were the client. So communication is huge, like making sure that the client is aware of everything that's going on. Being very clear in like, this is how, this is my process. This is how things are going to go. Steps one, two, three, like, here's the contract. Once you sign, there's a deposit. Once the deposit is received, you'll get the design, and then et cetera, et cetera. Making sure that they're very clear on the process, and even like scheduling stuff. Like if you say, I'll be there 9 a.m. on Monday, and if you're a little bit late, just keeping them informed, making sure that everybody is in the loop. I think that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah, and okay. It's just communication is just such a good topic to touch on as well
Hmm.
because even just what do you think your best practices are for communicating with customers? Like showing them examples visually or giving them updates of progress, or what do you think?
Um, yeah, I think both. I think visual um, stuff really resonates with a lot of people, especially like when I first started out. I actually started out doing chalkboard menus for businesses, and I would always ask like, this was back when Pinterest was, it's still a thing, but it was more of a thing back then. I would always ask the client like, hey, if you have a Pinterest board, like send me the Pinterest board, like some kind of like a mood board or something that if you've seen, something around that you're like, ooh, I really like that. Like, I want to see it because that gives me more of an idea of the style that you're looking for, the mood, maybe the colors, things like that. Um, and yeah, so that's helpful for me in terms of visuals. And also, I haven't started doing this 100%, but occasionally I will send like a mood board to a client just to give them an idea of like what's going on in my head, the colors and the content, things like that.
Okay, that's really good. Just so a mood board. Do you use a mood board for most of your projects?
I don't. It's kind of a new thing that I just started doing. I don't know if you'd consider this a mood board, but I definitely collect like examples of other murals or art or styles that I really like when I'm trying to figure out a design for a new project. I'll make like my own Pinterest board or something like that to collect things that like I'm really inspired by to sort of work from that.
Okay. Yeah, there's several projects that I'm thinking that come to mind that I wish we would have done this up front because I asked them, what colors do you like? And then this, and they answer me, and then I give them what I think they want. And I'm usually pretty good at that. And then they're like, oh,
Mhm.
no, no, we want this. And they give me something like really moody or really dark and green or something. I'm like, oh, when you said green, you meant that
Yeah.
green, not this green. So I
Right.
can
There's
see where
lots
the
of greens.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, not the rainbow green that's popping in my head.
Right, right.
Okay. Okay, awesome. Well, do you have any fun stories of lessons learned or things that pop in your mind of, I don't know, things kind of like that, like I just explained with the green?
Yeah, fun stories. Um,
Mhm.
oh gosh. Um, well, I wouldn't call it fun exactly, but I feel like this was a good learning experience for me. Um, so I was hired to do a mural a couple of years ago, and we had a lot of back and forth with the design. layout. And um, I have in my contract that, you know, you have a couple of revisions of the design, excuse me, until, you know, included in the price until it's another charge for like another design. And excuse me, they we kept going back and forth about the design. You know, I did like the two revisions. They decided they didn't like any of them, so then they wanted to pay me for another design. So we did that, and then they wanted to pay me for another design. And I got to the point where I had done six like distinct designs, not just variations of the same one, but like distinct, totally different layouts. And um, I was kind of like, pick one, please. I'm sort of over like this design process, and I feel like these are all good. So I'm happy with all of these. You know, you hired me based on my style, so I feel like, you know, one of these could be good. And they did end up picking one, and we had the date set for me to go out and paint and everything. And I think it was like 5 days before I was gonna go paint, they called me and they said, actually, we would like to change the design again. And luckily, in my contract, it says if you cancel on me, you know, less than 7 days, like a week before I'm supposed to go out and paint, I have a cancellation fee. And so we kind of that sort of went into effect. And I was like, look, I had already rented the lift. I had already mixed my paints. Like I was ready to go. Um, and it was kind of a shock that they had called me. This had never happened to me before. They had called me and said that they wanted to change it again. So um, the cancellation fee stood. They were not super happy with that, but it's, you know, it's in my contract. It was a very last minute change. Um, and ultimately, the communication with them had been very poor, which is why we kept going back and forth on design. And I ultimately said, you know what, I'm not really interested in doing any more designs. If you would like me to paint this mural, you have six options in front of you. And if none of these work for you, then you're going to have to find another artist. And they ended up picking somebody else, which is totally fine. And it was actually a huge weight off my shoulders. It was one of those projects that was just getting to the point where I was no longer excited about it. It was a bummer. I was over it. And yeah, I was actually glad that they went with somebody different because, you know, it had lost its shine, as they say. So I think it's really important to remember that you can always say no.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're not excited about it, like, at all, or almost even dreading doing it, s
Yeah.
like, and they present you with an out like they did,
Hmm.
then maybe just take it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been a couple that I can even just think of, not necessarily specifically, but just, like, several times where I went into it and, like, this customer might be kinda hard to deal with, because then if you go in and you paint it, what's gonna come then? You know, the revisions of
Mm.
while you're painting it, the nitpicking while it's happening, it's like they don't really stop after you
Yeah.
just created the I've had one customer in particular, and finally I was like, it just got to be laughable. So I went from all the emotions of, "Okay, here we go, excited," to, "This is really annoying," and dread, to, like, "This is kinda funny now." So and then, "Yay, it's over."
Right, right. Yeah, I've learned to stick to my guns, I guess you could
Mhm.
say. Like I'm definitely a people pleaser. I want everybody to be happy, especially when it's my work. Like that's, you know, it's my baby. Like I want you to love it and I want you to be happy with what, you know, the service that I've provided for you. Um, but there are limits, you know, you have boundaries. Like you have to be able to say, you know what, this is too much. Like I've definitely had those customers that you mentioned that are nitpicking, um, literally watching me paint over my shoulder and saying, "Oh, can you just change this one thing?" It's like, okay, let me do my job. But also, like, just make sure that you have boundaries that you're able to say, "This doesn't work for me," or if there's changes, like, you know, this is going to take more time, more energy, more paint. Um, Therefore, it's, going to incur an extra charge.
Okay. Yeah. Good, good. What other stories do you have? Something like that. That's a really good learning lesson. Not to call you out on the
Yeah.
spot and think of the best story you had of your career. We those are stories are
Um,
really the ones that go over really well with podcasting. It's just like you could
mhm.
imagine it, and it's like, "Oh, I get it," rather than just saying, "Don't do that," or "Have a good contract." It's like, "Okay, this is why."
Yeah, yeah. Having a good contract is key for sure. Very important to have stuff in writing. The the story I'm thinking of where they're sitting over my shoulder watching me paint. Um, I was doing a very extensive mural in the client's house, and it included his entire family, which was large. So I was painting portraits of every person in his family, and he actually let his family come see me as I was painting them, and they were, like, literally critiquing their own portraits as I was painting them. That was, I mean, I didn't necessarily learn anything from that experience. It was just kind of hysterical, and I guess the one thing that I learned was, I don't really ever wanna do this again. I don't wanna paint anyone's portrait in their own home with them watching me. It's not my favorite.
That's so funny. I've had people, like I don't do portraits, but the only time I did do with just, like, a lined drawing of somebody, they're like, "Can you make me thinner? Can you, like, do so and so?" Were they doing that?
I 100%, yeah. Actually, I'm sure that they're never gonna listen to this, but, the client actually asked me to make his wife thinner in the mural,
Wow,
and I
okay.
just smiled and nodded. Yeah, but, oh, yikes.
Like, okay. Did you make her thinner, or did you just, like,
I did a little bit, but I was like, "I'm not gonna make her look completely different." Like, I
yeah.
slimmed her down a little bit, but, like, I gotta be true to she wasn't a big person either, like, I thought she was completely normal looking. So, you know, very odd.
That is so odd. I remember back in the day, we used to do, like, promo modeling stuff and, like, bikini modeling, like, for, like, cars and whatnot, and I used to be over
Mhm.
my friend who was an editor, be like, "Can you do, like do pick apart just like that?" And now that I'm older and just, like, that's a weird thing. That's such a weird
Yeah,
thing to do of, like, the whole
totally.
just yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really quick, I
What?
know you're gonna edit this. If you wouldn't mind taking out the part that I said she looked totally normal, because 'cause I'm realizing now that, like, obviously normal people are also bigger, and that sounded really bad.
Oh!
That's
Oh,
not
I
how
didn't
I
even
meant
think
it,
about
so
it. She looked or maybe yeah, be like, she looked just fine. She looked
yeah,
great." Like,
she looked fine. Yeah,
she looked fine. Okay, will do. Um,
thank you.
okay. What other I'm interested in your stories, these are so entertaining. What else we got?
Let me think here.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, like, the classic stories that I'm sure every single muralist has dealt with, especially, uh, female presenting muralists, where people, usually men, but not always, will just make comments in passing, they usually mean well, but they're odd, a lot of times, like, if I'm on a lift, it's like, "Do you know how to operate that thing?" Or, like, you're on a ladder and it's like, "Oh, do you want me to hold the ladder for you?" Like, "No, please don't touch the ladder." I had one guy once, luckily I wasn't that high up, but as a quote unquote joke, he, like, grabbed the ladder while I was standing on it, and it freaked me out, and it was, like, really uncool, and, he thought it was funny. It wasn't funny. But, the little things like making comments in passing, like, "Oh, wow, that actually looks really good." Um, Sort of like a weird, uh, what would you say, like a weird, connotation maybe? Like, "Oh, wow, actually you're really good at your job. Thank you." I'm surprised.
Yeah, yeah. That's funny because that's how kinda how I take it sometimes, like, "That actually looks really good." It's like, that's exactly how my mind works, even though they're meaning well, and I'm like, "Don't be nitpicky."
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
the comments when people say anything. Yeah, it's like I remember, like, the one of, "Hey, you missed a spot," or, like, that one drives me up the wall. At one time, I
Yep.
said something, I was like I just turned around, I was like, "Do you know how many people say that?" And then he, like, felt he just had this face on it that I can't unforget. I can't forget that it was just like he was like, "Oh, dang, I shouldn't have said that." He walked away. I was like, "Dang it, I'm not gonna say anything next time." I'm just gonna
Yeah.
let him comment, be like, "Uh-huh, thanks."
I know, I've had those experiences too where, like, I have said something and then they feel bad, and then I feel bad that I made them feel bad, and I'm like, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean I didn't mean to make you feel bad, I just" sometimes when you get things constantly over and over, it grinds you down.
For sure. So, what are some business tips that if somebody wants to be where you are now, when they're just starting out, like just starting out in the beginning of maybe they've gotten a couple customers, or maybe they just did their first mural in their bedroom or something, and they wanna grow their art business. What are some of your pieces of advice that you would give your younger self?
Oh gosh, something I would tell my younger self for sure is, network, meet people, follow the artists that you're interested in, that you admire. Um, if possible, like work with a muralist. Murals are a very like niche art form, and doing a mural is not necessarily the same as just doing a big painting. I mean, it is, but there's a lot more that goes into it than just thinking like, oh, I can paint on a canvas, so I'm just gonna blow it up and, you know, paint on a wall. It's not it's the same. There's a lot more nuance to it, and I think, something that I would have benefited from early on in my career is, um, working with a muralist. I've worked with a handful of different people, uh, and they've all, taught me something different. Um, a lot of different techniques that people use, a lot of different processes, and kind of gathering all those different ways of doing things can kind of inform the way that you end up doing your work. um, like, oh, I really like how this turned out with this technique, I'm gonna go with that next time. Or this the way that this muralist did this, like, seemed to work for him, but I thought it was odd and didn't really work for me, so maybe I won't do that. um, yeah, it just kind of, you can sort of figure out your own technique and your own process.
So you're learning from somebody who's already done it, like you
Yes.
now, listening to
Yeah.
the advice. But even
Yeah,
more so just
exactly.
going in person is huge. I wanna echo that, just,
Hmm.
like, learning from people who've already done it for sure. Okay. Alright, well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your fun stories of
Thank
fun
you.
times.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, we appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you as well. This has been great. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna click in